Ultimatum is the final installment of the Bourne series, until Bourne Legacy and Jason Bourne. This movie came out in 2007, and it was once again directed by Paul Greengrass. And this movie tries to close the Matt Damon story arc because he's actually really close to finding out why he became an assassin, what happened, what did they do to him to become this guy. And when some news about Project Blackbriar comes out and Jason Bourne gets some flashbacks that he doesn't really understand, he decides to go hunting once again to find out more information about himself. And on the CIA side of things, because of Brian Cox shooting himself in the face in the last movie, we now have David Strathairn taking his place, wanting to cover his tracks because he was involved in some of the stuff, and he doesn't want Bourne to uncover it. And then you have Pam Landy once again just doing her job, and that's really cool. Back in the day, I said the Bourne Ultimatum was the best one in the series, and you know what? I still stand by it. The Bourne Ultimatum not only is the best Bourne movie, but it is one of the best action movies of all time. In this movie, I think Paul Greengrass really delivered with his action sequences. The editing and the cinematography and the directing could not be better, especially with the chases in this movie. There's one in the beginning of the movie where Paddy Considine is playing this news reporter who uncovered some things about Project Blackbriar, and Jason Bourne's trying to help him live because he wants some information from him, and he's instructing him what to do, telling him to hide, while Jason Bourne beats some people up. That was a really intense scene, and I just realized Paddy Considine, I had no idea who was in this movie because I love him in Hot Fuzz and The World's End, and I was like, oh, you! What are you doing here? First Carl Urban, and now this guy. What do you know? There's also a really intense car chase later on in the movie near the finale between Jason Bourne and Edgar Ramirez, even though it ends kind of the same way as the Bourne Supremacy when he's gonna kill Edgar Ramirez, but then he decides, nah. That conclusion to that action scene actually does play out a little bit into the finale of the movie, so I like how they changed it up a little bit. But by far, the best action scene in this movie was the Bourne versus Desh fight, and it's not just because of the choreography, it's not just because of the editing or the direction or the quick shots. All those things are really good about that action scene, and that scene was really nail-biting. But it was the lead-up as well. It starts off with Jason Bourne tracking down Desh on a motorcycle, and then something happens, and then it's an on-foot chase, and Nikki, who is helping out Bourne, is now trying to get away from the scene, but Desh is closing in. Then you have the police hunting down Jason Bourne, and then Jason Bourne is on rooftops getting away from those people, and Nikki is now running away from Desh inside a building, but Desh is closing in, and Jason Bourne is jumping through windows to try to find where Nikki and Desh are, and then he finally sees them, and while Desh is closing in on Nikki, he crashes through the window and the fight begins. That was the perfect way to build up the tension, to build up the suspense. So when that action scene happens, you still feel your heart pounding because you just saw this really intense stuff to begin with, and then you follow that up with a really, really well done action scene that is so intense. If you somehow do not know why people are excited for Jason Bourne, two things: Matt Damon coming back and Paul Greengrass. Paul Greengrass has made some of the best action scenes ever in the Bourne Ultimatum, so him coming back to do Jason Bourne, that's kind of a big deal. And Jason Bourne, I really like Matt Damon's portrayal once again. Kind of obvious at this point, I've said it so many times, but near the end of this movie in particular, I really like Matt Damon's portrayal because some flashbacks hit and you remember some things about the program, some decisions that he made, and when that thing is revealed, you're like, oh no. And it helps that you've been along this crazy ride with him since the beginning of the Bourne identity, so when some things are revealed later in this movie, it just makes that reveal even more dramatic. And I also love how they made Nikki a better character, because in the first two movies, she was good. She was good, you know, she was a good character, but she wasn't anything special. But in this movie, they had her team up with Bourne, she helped out a bit, and they actually revealed that maybe she and Bourne had a relationship in the past. That was something I definitely didn't pick up on the first time I saw it, but all those things made Nikki an even more interesting character, and actually made her more likable, and she and Matt Damon actually had some good chemistry. And David Strathairn in this movie is really good, because even though he's playing the same guy as Brian Cox, basically, like trying to cover up his tracks, in this movie, since Jason Bourne is actually getting closer to knowing the truth, and he's actually getting closer than David Strathairn would want, you can actually feel that he's getting nervous and anxious, like, oh no, Bourne can't find this out, we gotta stop him. And you can really feel the tension that's going on with his character, and the tension gets even bigger with this guy when he has to interact with Joan Allen's character, Pam Landy, who is also really good in this movie. These two interacted in the best best way possible. And the CIA stuff started off from being kind of intriguing to intriguingly intense to even more intriguingly intense. And the conclusion of this movie, not only is it a good ending for this movie, and it's not only a perfect ending for the series, it's one of the best endings to a trilogy of all time. In fact, the entire Bourne Trilogy is one of the best trilogies of all time. The Bourne Ultimatum is extremely well directed by Paul Greengrass, some of the most nail-biting stuff in the entire series. Matt Damon does another great job playing Jason Bourne. The performances could not be better. This movie is the best in the series, and I gotta give the Bourne Ultimatum an A+. If you somehow have not watched the Bourne Trilogy yet, and you do want to see Jason Bourne, well, you gotta watch these movies first. So please watch them immediately. Even if you don't have an interest for Jason Bourne, maybe you're turned off by the Bourne movies because, oh, it just looks like a dumb action movie. They're not. There's actually a really intriguing story going along with all of these movies, and it just helps that it has some really amazing suspense and well-directed action sequences. But if you've already seen the Bourne Ultimatum, which is very likely, leave in the comments below of what you thought of it, and I'm seeing Jason Bourne tonight. Super excited for it. I cannot wait to see this movie. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.